Lest the audience have an incorrect impression of the area, I just want to comment a bit about some of the cultural institutions, and there were several. One that was very, very important, and that was the Webster branch of the New York Public Library, which was on 78th and York Avenue.
Still is.
Still extant. However, during the interwar period and throughout the 50s and 60s, through 1960, this was the largest collection of Czech and Slovak and some Rusin books outside of Czechoslovakia. Wow. There were about 16,000 volumes in this collection, many of which were sent by the sophisticated people, the educators in the Czech Republic, to enlighten the community here as to Czech and Slovak and to some degree Rusin culture in interwar Czechoslovakia. In 1960, this entire collection, when the neighborhood began its process of gentrification, this entire collection was moved to the World Languages Collection on 53rd Street of the New York Public Library. And when I returned to New York in 1984 to become a curator at New York Public at the research libraries, I inherited this collection. So, and it was really a source of tremendous gratification for me to go back and revisit material that I had seen as a child in these two rooms of the Webster branch, which was outfitted like a small Czechoslovak state, with pictures of the panoramic pictures of the Moldau, with ceramics, with embroideries, with statuary of Stefanik, of Masaryk, and so on, all of the political figures of that time. There were two other libraries in the neighborhood, one on 79th, Yorkville on 67th Street between 1st and 2nd. And these were really very important for the acculturation of the community, of people like myself, who were children of immigrants and who were essentially living in this ghetto, and it served as a conduit for us to the larger American world. And I should also mention one other thing. I believe one of my colleagues mentioned it, the public school, which was on 70th Street and First Avenue, no longer extant, PS 82. And this is also very important because the principal of the school was a Czech lady, dama, Pani Novi, who was really of the old school, with the lace handkerchiefs, with the beautifully tailored suits and so on, commanding presence to these children. But many of the teachers of that generation came from a different social stratus, a different social stratum, I should say. They were highly educated ladies, very often either Catholic or Protestant, who came to teach in this ethnic school, which, as you can imagine, was very disciplined, very disciplined. And every Friday we had attendance, auditorium as it was called, on the top floor of this school, third floor or fourth floor, and everyone would rise when the principal entered the school. There would be of course, singing of the national anthem, honor, flag guard, and so on, all of these things. But I want to share one, again, just one anecdote of the school. The top floor of one of the classrooms overlooked on 71st Street and First Avenue, an artist studio. And the artist studio still exists. It's now Christ the Savior Russian Orthodox Church. A church that is, the pastor of which is a very famous Russian dissident, Father Mirsion Aksionov. And every time the teacher exited the classroom, all of the boys, including myself, would go to the window to peer down into the artist studio where the nude models would be posing for the artist. And one of the great...
Yeah, maybe you don't want to talk about this.
Well, no.
That's another quaint folk custom, right?
Well, there's a spiritual dimension to my story. Many years later, about 10, 15 years ago, I attended a wake. At this church, the coffin of the deceased, the editor of a Russian journal, Novy Trudno, was lying there, and where the altar, just in front of the altar, and I remarked to Father Mersion Aksionov about the previous use of the space that he was curating, because this was the dais on which these nude models were posing during the 50s and so on, time of the artist studio. So, spiritual dimensions of the nude.
There's so much to say, but what happened to this community? Well, with the end of World War II, men were coming back from service, they were getting married, they wanted to move out of the community. The UN was housed in Queens, they needed a new home. There was a meatpacking, the biggest in the city, on First Avenue, where now sits the United Nations. And so when the United Nations came in, the whole East Side changed. Not many people wanted to live on the East Side at that time. I mean, I recall in high school, the girls on the West Side had a better location than we had on the East Side. But that's how this neighborhood changed. With the UN coming in, there came all the high-rises and the end of this community.